This week on the Unamplified podcast.
It's the month of March, and we're back again. It's the Unamplified podcast season 3, and our call is Accelerate Action. My name is Cynthia Mbamalu, your host. Hello, Africa. And today, as always, I have my co-host.
Hi, everyone. My name is Queen Siwa. You already know. Welcome to the Unamplified podcast.
Yes, it's good to be back.
Of course.
It was a long break. I know what they say.
Well, the third time is always the charm.
Yes, and this third season, we'll be having a lot of conversations that are centered on women's issue, but also looking at issues of democracy and development in Africa, because we believe that a strong and developed Africa is the Africa that we all deserve as Africans. And for this first episode, we have two amazing women. Woo! Hi, guys. Well, so you guys are like the ones launching this season, basically.
Like, yes.
Yes, it's good to have you on the Unamplified podcast. And it's my honor and privilege to welcome Dr. Azizat Yishau. Am I pronouncing it well?
Yes.
The SSA to the Honorable Minister of Youth on Youth Policy Development and Analysis.
Yes, thank you so much, Cynthia.
Welcome.
Thank you.
It's been a while, actually.
I know, yes.
Yes, I'm happy that you were able to join us for this episode.
My pleasure.
And then we have another amazing woman. This one, we're doing a lot of organizing together. We have Hassana Meina. She's the Executive Director of ASVIO, and you work to support sexual and gender-based violence victims. It's good to have you on this episode. Yes. Ladies, it's the month of March.
Mm-hmm.
You know now, March is Women's Month.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're going to be discussing issues around the politics of representation, the good, the bad, the ugly. Because for everything that has a good side, it's obviously a bad side. For everything that has a pro, there's a con, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll first ask a general question to every one of us. Or maybe I'll start with my co-host. What does representation mean to you?
Well, to me, representation means ways where individuals or groups are portrayed, acknowledged, and included in the decision-making process. So in politics, as that's what you're discussing, is just a way where women, marginalized groups are represented in government.
Yeah, representation is, as the word entails, I want to be there, we want to be there, we want to be seen. But does representation matter in government? Let me start with you, Dr. Azizat.
I think thank you very much, Cynthia. And it's a pleasure to be here, especially in the third season. And I'm sure that we've done amazing work before, especially with Yaga and then, of course, with this amazing podcast. So to go straight to the point, I think we've established the fact that representation is important in government. Government is about the people, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a term that we use in a civilized gathering where people understand the value for leadership, understand the value for getting things done as a collective. So when you say government is an institution that is supposed to govern or lead a group of people. So representation is very, very important. You cannot lead people who are not part of, the community. So if you are governing a certain group of people, a community to achieve a certain goal, then participation of those same community, those same group of people is very important, in the leadership structure that you are having. Mm-hmm. So it's an established fact that representation is very much important, in government, especially if we're having democracy, right? So there are different kinds of, leadership and governance, right? So when we're talking about democracy, then representation is at the core of the structure for that kind of
representation is at the core of democracy. So if there's no representation, it's not
democracy. Yes,
well, then not started government. Yes,
just started.
We're just getting ready.
Yes.
Hassana, why is representation important, and what does it mean to you?
I think for me, representation means to see someone that looks like me, in a room, in a place where decisions are being made. Because when I think of democracy, I think of the simple definition by Abraham Lincoln, government of the people, for the people, and by the people. But I would like to think that democracy is accumulation of perspective. So when you're excluding certain people from, airing their perspective, from giving, voice to what they think, it means you're excluding them from government. It means there's a big price to exclusion that we're even seeing in Africa, we're seeing in Nigeria, where voices of women, where voices of people with disabilities, where voices of, so at the end of the day, it's just important because you get to hear perspectives other than your own. When I was doing my master's at SOAS, I remember looking at the world and looking at even legislation and looking at our colonial history and seeing that the legal frameworks that we've had has always thought of a white, male, straight, Christian, and all of those different ideas that make up a person. So when we build structures, be it legal framework, when we build structures, be it policy or whatever, and we're only thinking of one person in mind, then what happens is that you're excluding every other person, and imagine the kind of world where it just made for one person. How boring would that be?
It would be boring. I always tell people that there's a reason the rainbow is beautiful, because it's a mixture of so many colors. And there's a reason in our society we are created differently. You have different colors, different sizes, different shapes, different sex, because if it was just one thing, everything would just be boring, right? And that is the idea of government. And I love the fact you talked about the legal framework, and you love you talked about at the core of democracy, because we're looking at if we say we are a democracy, the representation should be at the heart of the work that we do. And if we say we're a democracy, then our legal framework, our policies should be representative, that we're capturing or catering to the needs of every sector of the society, everyone. And so we want to talk about politics. We'll see why.
Talking about politics.
Yes.
The main mention of, we are talking about how women are being represented in politics and on all that. I want to ask, should young women care about politics?
Yeah, absolutely. Young women must care about politics, because if you don't care about politics, politics cares about you. So you have to care about politics. And I know that when we talk about politics, it's like the perception around it, it's considered a dirty game. It's considered, it's not safe, for young women. I served as the Special Assistant on Sustainable Development Goals to His Excellency Atiku Abubakar during the last campaign. And I remember there were lots of concerns from family members, especially women. But it's that we must, and I remember my mom, saying, so if she's not there, how can our voices be heard? And this is my mom that, I think it took her a while to understand having a daughter like me. So all I'm saying is, at the core of it, everybody wants to be heard. There's a saying we have in Hausa that chiwon iya mace sai iya mace ne, like the pain of a female child can only be articulated by another female or by another woman. So the truth is, everybody must be there, because I think we even look at what we're facing today in democracy, where you're saying that, the older woman's perspective is very different from the younger woman's perspective. The way older women address issues very different from the way younger women would address issues. So there's already a divide, So how can we ensure that that divide is used for healthy debates, strengthens our policy in the way that makes us better, in the way that challenges status quo? It's by involving young women in politics. It's by, the energy that young women come with, the perspectives, it's very different.
Like nobody can understand us apart from we, the women. For example, there are some policies that will be made in decision making, and if we are not there, policies that can affect us in education, in our health system, if we are not there to make contributions, how are we going to even air our own view in our own unique way?
I agree with
For
you.
example, the birth mortality rate in women, there are some policies that might affect women, and if women are not there, it's going to affect us greatly.
And just to add, if you look at even how young women are talking about pregnancy, morning sickness, and I think there's a name for it, I can't pronounce it for the love of God, but older women would look at the same issue and say, but we've been taking it on, like we've been managing, why are you complaining? But you've been managing, but the birth mortality during your time is higher. You've been managing, but you've had lots of children die in infancy. So by getting those voices, by amplifying those voices, we make women safer and we keep women alive.
Yeah, and I think I'll bring Dr. Aziza, because this is a very important conversation.
Yes.
A lot of times we meet young women because we have engagement to go to communities, to go to schools, and we talk about politics. And sometimes some of them will say, oh, I don't care about politics. I have to start to engage them and explain. I know you've been in politics since I can remember. You're the first female speaker of the Nigeria Youth Parliament. Yeah. Why should women, young girls, care about politics? Because she made a very fantastic point, and she has laid a foundation to this conversation from your own experience.
I would like to expand what you understand by politics. So politics is like a tool. There's a strategy. It's a method of negotiating interest, right? To influence an outcome or to get something out. It's although we like to think there's a profession around it, or like it's a sector. And so in every of our daily life, even for young women, we engage in politics.
Yeah.
Right? Because at a very specific time, only a few things can exist at a time. So sometimes there's need to prioritize, there's a need to put things in phases. So that is when politics comes in to address, to advocate, to debate the issues, to find the relevance. Why should we start this first? In democracy, we don't totally remove everything. But at times in governance, in politics, we start prioritizing what is very, very important. So I wanted to expand that perspective. So of course, politics is one of the ways in which we get issues, things done. Right, where it's also a transportation means for leadership, political offices, or anything as the case might be. So, for example, politics is if you have two people showing an interest in a particular position to lead, or to the politics of campaigning, telling people why I am fit for this position, trying to campaign, gather support, trying to reach out to people. That is the politics as well. Because if you sit down where you are and say, I want to go for this position, nobody is going to vote for, even if you just say, show interest. That is not even enough. Do you understand me? So the process of your campaigning, you're mapping out the interest, you're trying to get more people to believe in you, or to accept, or to align with you, that is what politics is for me. So right from secondary school, even university in a way, I wasn't the class prefect in primary school, but then when I got to secondary school, of course there were positions there. And then in my secondary school, I was also the head girl then, and then I moved on to university, and then I was in the political space. So it's important that young women are aware that they are actively involved in politics, one way or the other. I think the thing that most young women and women don't understand is that their everyday life is also what politics have a role to play.
Yes.
And at every point in time, you need to actively be involved. Don't be passive about it. It's when you're passive about it that decisions are made. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? You are the last to get there. Nobody value you at any point in the time in making your decision. So every day we make politics, we manage people around us, we make decisions. You understand? Whether you're working in the office, whether you're even making you're doing your daily things, like things that are most convenient for you. But there's politics in the process, especially when there's one-on-one interest. That's where politics comes in. There's no other interest. One straight wood. The moment there's multiple interest in something, politics is the methodology for sorting out the interest. So young women should be involved. I think that the concern for most of us here is the fact that politics is very important in governance. And governance makes decisions for young women, whether you like it or not. So there are different strata. I used to say it, and I'll say this as a matter of fact from my own experience. It's not every young person that wants to run for office. Nobody has the stress. It's a wahala. I know, it's serious wahala. Sometimes I like, who asks you to come here, and there's someone that you are not even in the same space. So the person is tapping at you, giving you woto. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, why am I here? But there are different cadre of participating in politics and in decision-making process. So you have to be conscious in your community, especially where decisions are being made. So young women, even if you're in the rural community, where decisions are made at the town hall meetings, where decisions are made at the chieftaincy level, do you understand what I'm saying? So when there's representation, especially if the outcome of such gathering would affect you, you don't need to be passive about it. Because when they are counting those who will be subject to such decision, you would be there. So if they say, okay, women should not go out 8 o'clock because of so and so, and you are not in the decision to tell them, I walk, do you know what I'm trying to say? I close later than this, right? This is your right to livelihood. If you are not there, or for some reason, let me just give a very silly example. Maybe it is that 8 o'clock that women can now receive fresh air. I'm not saying, for example, if you are not at that meeting, they would assume that they've made a good decision for you. That doesn't even assume that everybody is fine. So for young women, whether you are in school, whether you are in the rural community, do you understand me? The first set of participating in politics is make sure that what your voice is what is heard.
Okay.
There are ways and strategies to make sure that your voice is heard, depending on where you are or the environment that you are operating. But the first step for young people is always contribute. There is a survey going on. There is a meeting going on. They are going to make a decision. They are going to announce some decisions. You need to be there. If not anything, to even know. Do you understand me? What is being discussed? So it doesn't have to be that yes, I must contest for elections.
yes.
And also, if you are going to aspire for greatness, if you are going to aspire for more, then you must be interested in what? In politics. Whether in the political sector, whether it's in the private sector, whether it's even in building yourself. When you enter a room, you want to convince people to buy your idea, to give you this opportunity, it is still politics. The method of negotiating and making
One question to ask her. How is your experience like as an SSA to the president? Like,
to the honorable minister. I'm not the president yet.
sorry, I was really
like that. Yeah, no. So I mean, I've been with my boss for the last 1 year, and I would say it's a shared experience because the minister is also a very young person. So it's a shared experience in working in government space. What you will achieve in the development space at the tip of your, do you understand? In government, it's totally different. Do you understand me? And for me specifically, I think that the good thing there is that the Honorable Minister for Youth is someone that comes from the youth perspective, understand the value for us. It was easy. I was the Speaker of the Parliament. I showed a little bit of capacity or an experience in getting things done for young people. And so it was easy to come on board. At least within the essays, we have, you understand me, a good number of women occupying that, that particular position. So all in all, so far so good. My experience has not even been on me as as a woman specifically, but we're getting things done and we're trying to work. So it was a valuable experience. However, it doesn't remove the usual what we know occur in political spaces, right? Of what is the situation of women. Even though I'm dressed like this, all covered like this, those cases are there. But the one thing that has worked for me is that because I've gathered some of my capacity and my skill, it's easier to divert for such places and find other ways. So for example, the resources is there, someone is making it difficult, you have from experiences, from capacity building, from exposure, you can now start doing your plan B, plan C, and getting things done. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought in the point of with your capacity, and even though you're working and you're learning in the process, there are still challenges that you experience.
Yes.
No matter how you show up, no matter what you do.
No matter how you show up.
No matter how you show up, the experiences are still there.
Yeah.
And I want to bring in Hassana because I know you're one of the young female young feminists, and I see you also advocating for issues on protection of young women, girls from sexual and gender-based violence. I also have heard you talk a lot about the experiences of young women and why we need to start changing conversations around. I think you also talked about how another woman may have been okay with, condoned, and said, okay, I'm cool with it. A young woman will say, no, let's talk about this. With your experience in the work that you're doing, what is one of those ugly sides of politics, especially as it relates to gender-based violence? And I'll come to you also.
Thank you so much for this question. I think we must understand this from the perspective of the world that we live in. The basis of patriarchy is power, right? It's how can I harness power and how can I get power? So when women's perspectives are not heard, it is not an oversight. It's not because women are not speaking. It is by design, right? So I also participated in student politics in ABU's area. And I remember there's something they call alutai. So alutai, ideally, from what I was meant to understand, was supposed to mean a woman that is in the struggle, However, the more it got male-dominated, the more men now turned it into a companion, a hooker. Yes. So, and if you look at this, it comes from the idea of the larger society. How do we see women? How do we view women? What do we think women are? So if you're able to answer all these three questions, you would understand that referring to alutai as a companion is not far-fetched. So when you're being referred to as Alutai, would you want to go into politics? Would you want to get into the bus with these young men to go and do some political activities? So from that university level, your voice is already being stifled. You don't even want to participate because first things first, our reputation is key, especially as women. From your young age, they're always telling you must hold the family name because tomorrow you would want to get married. You don't want any... And all you're doing is participating in politics. However, somebody from university can say, she was an Alutai. And that is it, end of marriage, you've disgraced your family simply by participating. So we must understand that it is by design, why we have women where they are. However, what can we do about it? There are so many instances where women come out and speak around sexual violence. And even to me, why I started as well support initiative was looking at what we've done during the area with Me Too and Not Normal and passing legislation, the RAP Act, getting it domesticated across states. I started to engage with communities. I'd go to Maiduguri, I'd engage with communities. I'd go to places, I'd engage with communities. I've realized that sexual violence is a patriarchal tool that takes women away from the public space. So the whole idea is to take women away from the public space, because if it's not, why then are we not making the public space safer for women? Remember when I started talking, I told you we must look at the framework in which we exist. Who is it created for, And the truth is that if you look at it, it's created for men. Because in England, if you go on a date, behind the bathroom, you would see, are you on a date? Is it not going well? Go to the bartender and ask for Angela, and the police will take you out without a fuss. In Nigeria, our police would say, so you went out with him, and you don't want to, eating his money. So look at the perspective in which we exist, and then now look at how we look at young women when they dare to even participate in public. So, and basically I think that's where the work that we do, development work, comes in. We have to change people's minds. We have to ensure that we amplify young women's voices. We have to ensure that we create protection strategies, around even people that are speaking. We have to ensure that we amplify people's voices that is beyond reproach, and all of these things require work. But then when it comes to the ugly sides of politics, there are lots of it. Sexual violence is just one of it, but there are lots and lots of ugly sides of politics. You have issues where if you're not sexually violated, you're being intimidated, you're being abused emotionally, you're talked down to. I think whenever I speak to my friend, I'm always like, politics is such a leveler. Because engaging in the little, thing that I engaged with during the campaign, I realized how much of a leveler it is. If I was working in the private sector, there's people that would never have access to me. But now I'm here, I'm campaigning, we're together, so you can say anything. So it's such a leveler, and, of course, we must engage in our community, because our mothers, Fumila and some Kuti, Margaret Ekpo, did not just sit down. But did not just sit down in their bubble.
Yes.
They came out and they engaged. No matter how ugly it was, no matter what it was, they came out and they did all that. So I think, despite the ugly challenges, as a woman, one of the things, as Millie would say, the parliamentarian in Kenya, be comfortable with being a bad girl. Be very comfortable with it.
I am point of order, Mr. Speaker. I am a bad girl. No. I love the perspective you've brought to this. And I'll come to you, Dr. Aziza, because I remember in 2019, we had a meeting with young women that ran in that election. Yeah. That was the first election after the not to run was passed into law. And in that space, a lot of them shared horrid experiences and funny story, none of them wanted to report. None of them wanted to talk about it publicly. So we even had to turn off the cameras. And then we asked them why. Some of these were sexual harassment, sexual abuse. And we said, why don't you report abuse? And they always tell you that, in politics, if you want to continue, you don't want to speak up sometimes because you don't want to be victimized or you don't want to be kicked out of the space. And so I'm wondering, because you've had some experience, and I know I know the way I've seen you, I've always told you that one day this National Assembly in Nigeria, either the House of Reps or the Spending, yes, you will be a presiding officer. Yes. What do you think? What has been your experience, and have you had those kinds of stories before within the space? And what can we do to address that? Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to be very blunt, right? Because there's this book. Hopefully, I write it. Okay. You understand? And I already have a title for all my books. Yeah.
Okay.
So the one is Psychophancy, Sex, or something scandalous, right? That is the title of the book, and to share experiences in the political space. So I will discuss politics in Nigeria because we want to assume that in other climes, things are a little just what be better. So politics in Nigeria is violent, is intimidating, and is abusive. Even for men, right? We've had chairman of one local, they cut off the person's head. Chicken they kidnap the family, right? That is how we express interest and we try to influence politics in Nigeria. And the sad thing there is that they will not say, because this is a woman, let us what? Hands off. You understand? So the idea is to say, okay, this person is a woman. What's the weak point? And so what I say is that in this time, if you are a young woman or if you're a woman you are participating, but you must be keenly aware of every of those vulnerability, and you must prepare as such. Because I would tell you, men to prepare, and that is one thing I want to tell women in politics. Is not one of the strengths for us as women is that we're able to quickly, if the opportunity, the voice out. Politics, that's what they say, is a long process, right? Remember, you join politics, even in advanced country, there's a community. This person is a politician, this person is in politics, and how you handle those issues. It does not mean that we should neglect safety or what is proper. You understand? So, for example, me, I drive by myself. I've driven from Lagos to Ilorin before. Yes, in my own car. You understand me? But I didn't go alone. I had a few of my team. You understand what I'm trying to say? So I was not going to say that because what they wanted to do, they should consider because I'm the only person there. I went there. The second time I went to Oyo. I drove all the whole of Southwest because, of course, it was relatively safe. You understand me? And what that means that what I had to be prepared to go the long distance. The Alutayi that Usaina, right? Asana, what you said, apparently it's not the same in Southwest. If you're an Alutayi, you're not necessarily an Uka, but you match your male counterpart for a woman. So if they say they are standing there till midnight, gidigba, you are there, in those midnight. We didn't have this interpretation, right? In down south or maybe particularly Southwest. So for a young woman, you should know that in politics, people would like to intimidate you. Do you understand? Your male counterparts too, they are being intimidated. Do you understand? There was one time, I don't want to mention the governor, but I think it's in South or South. They went to the house, started removing the roof, came in. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? You can even ask the wives and families of politicians. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? They've been assaulted or harassed or threatened. The issue of violence, sexual threat or even sexual violence in the political space is seen. You've even seen women to women. Do you understand me? Threatening people that will send people to mess you up, telling to another woman. Do you understand me? If they are vying for the position, we will send people that will mess you up, and we know what it means to mess somebody up in that regard. So, as a young woman, if you are rolling up, these are the things that you should be acutely aware of. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? And then to prepare. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? The best. Now, the political space is lacking generally, and is even more insufficient for women. We've talked about the fact that when you have more women in spaces, those spaces, those communities become safer, they become more equitable, they become more inclusive, and they are more rational.
Yes.
And there's empathy, right? Because then if you see a woman, you know what empathy is the only way to approach such issues. So you see a situation whereby when you have enough women in those spaces, it's not difficult to understand persons with disability. It's not difficult to understand vulnerable people. It's not difficult to understand that violence is not an approach for a methodology. So in the political space, I think that for us in development space and those of us that advocate is to create strength. And I think that Yaga and my sister from Elect-A did a lot in the last 2019 election to support women that have identified to run for election. So there was capacity building. There was this community space. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? To ensure that, okay, if you are going, if it's in the evening, what are we providing to support? Do you understand what you need to do? Do you need to get an hotel close to the place? Those are the conversations that we had. And then we also need to have I think she said something again, a structure or a system for reporting and verifying cases. Right, there's somebody right now that's making an accusation at the Senate, and people are complaining about the approach of such an individual, right? And sometimes we realize that women's case are counted as sentimental. It's all emotions, right? But both men and women have various ways of what expressing what emotion. If somebody abuse you now, go and drink, and you drink to stupor, it's an emotion that you are expressing. That's someone that decides to what lash out or complain. You understand? So what are those structures? Especially if we are building something specifically that is uniquely to adapt to women that are running for office or in political space, so that you can report and then you can what have those issues what being what addressed, especially what anonymously, so that you can still be in the same space. We should have that kind of what community specifically for what, because it will come up. I'm not going to lie about it. It will come up, because if you like cover your head, someone will tell you that, oh yeah, make me happy. You've not done, you just,
You know what, like, you understand? I liked what you said, if you like cover your hair. Yeah. Because most times people will say, no, you with your face. You with your face, yes. With your face. Yes. So they're not even seeing there, but they just know that it's
all you have to do is just walk out and ask for a favor or ask for something. The other person, depending on the character of the person, anyway, because a few of my mentors, even most of my mentors are men, right? They want to negotiate. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I say, okay, what can we get? Do you understand in that way? And to add again in politics, this is free expose. Again, politics in most places is about what do we have over these people. So you see things like skeleton what in the cupboard. So if you're a woman, I don't reach there, they hold it. So when it's time to face off, you will not want to face off with the person, because the person can say, okay, we're going to tell them that, okay, we've been there before, or if you have been there before, fine and good. Me, I used to tell people, I'm not someone that would probably exhibit my rights to sexual freedom, right? But if we say that, say thank you, and we move on. Do you understand what do you understand what the conversation? Because so I think for even us in our community, let's demystify those things. Someone was saying that somebody has 6 children with 6 men. She likes it like that. It's okay. So what? So what? It's okay. The women community, we like it like that. Very industrious. At it. Yes. It does not warrant to label such a person or to force yourself, on such individual.
I love these perspectives that both of you have brought to, because most times we want to look for ways to justify anyone speaking up for themselves. Yeah. And we want to look for how to undermine their voice, ridicule their complaints. And I think this happens at every level of government, from the top at the national to the local. And I remember some weeks ago, we had a meeting with student female leaders from tertiary institutions in the Southwest. I'm going to talk about this. There's actually a lot of differences with how Alutam, the struggle is in the South than in the North. Yeah. And I remember that in the Southwest, we had these ladies, young ladies, were vibrant. I mean, some of them were the first female SCG president. We had the one for the lady from Calabar. She was there also. And from some different other schools. And I was like, imagine that it's in 2024 that we're having first female leaders in some institutions that have existed since 30, 40 years ago. But in that room, one of them, she shared her experience. She said, at the time she started campaigning for her position, before she knew, she was in a relationship. And then the guy stopped talking to her. And when she went to meet her, and he just, I don't want to use the term so that it doesn't also highlight who the person is, basically said, oh, now that I decided to be the prostitute of the school, I don't think I want to date you. And she said, how did I decide to be pro? Because I'm campaigning. Say, anyone that is running for this, you will not tell me that you're not doing this or you're not doing that. And then I looked at her, I said, in university, she said, yes. But she just told him, you know what? Thank you for this sign. Now I know this relationship cannot go further. I accept the breakup. And she moved on. She won her elections. But you see, they were sharing experiences from tertiary institutions. And for those that even speak up, people were already say, oh, why are you speaking up? Why are you not dating this guy? Or why are you not hanging out with him? And he did this. Why are you now complaining? Or, oh, you've been in 3 relationships within 1 semester. And it's like, how is that anyone's business? So when you talk about, there's nothing peculiar to anyone that is complaining. If someone is complaining, whatever her identity is, whatever she is, or that's different. The issue is there's a complaint. Let's address that. Same also for men. And we always talk about how people express themselves. I say, when a woman shouts, they say, this one, she's a crazy person, she's mad. When a man shouts, they say, a defender. He's speaking for himself. He's agitated. When men fight in public, they say this guy did not want his honor to be dragged in the mud. When a woman fights in public, shameless woman, crazy. So I'm always like, why do we always the same attitude? And I think Chimamanda has talked about it. Honorable Millie that he talked about. A lot of people have talked about the same character exhibited by a man and a woman, but interpreted differently because of the gender. And I'm like, in politics, we need to stop making things about gender. If a woman speaks, she's assertive. If she's leading, she's a leader. She's not controlling. She's leading. If she has strong opinions on stuff, she is opinionated and that's her voice. The same way a man will have strong opinions and would accept that. What can we do to get more young women in politics? And I'll start from my co-host. How can we get young women in politics? And then also the question around in Africa, so not just politics in Nigeria, even within the continent. And I want you, as you end your reflections or your contributions, what would be your call to action to anyone watching this episode today? I'll start with you.
Okay, I think political parties should get like a support group or maybe a more experienced woman in politics to serve as a mentor to young women, for them to like be encouraged to come into politics.
Would you want to go into politics?
I don't like
professional politics. No, I don't. They are paid every day. You have saying okay, professional. But would you like to run for any offices beyond the politics? Because I know even in the private sector, for instance, you have leadership positions in businesses and all of those. So would you want to occupy any of those positions where you're the one taking the decisions?
Funny enough, I'm just a simple person. I just like my simple life. I don't like stress.
You don't like stress?
I think, as she said, that politics is a whole lot of work. That you should be ready to experience so many things. And I don't want to see myself there. Maybe not because of any, that's just me. I don't want to be in that space. But I like supporting those who are going for it. I can cheer you on, I can vote for you, I can push you.
Yeah, I know you like to campaign for people also. Yeah, but I saw you doing campaigns in the last elections. I've had some.
So there's this saying in Hausa that I don't know, I've been speaking Hausa a lot. They should give me a professorship. They said abunda nemijiye adoni. So whatever a man does is an adornment. And sadly, it's this country or the culture that we find ourselves in. But we must rethink those culture. You know, Chimamanda said something about the type of man that is intimidated by me is exactly the type of man I'm not interested in. We must change that culture by getting more people to say no to certain kinds of treatment, to certain kinds of things. And we must also teach girls to identify certain things. There's certain things that someone would say to you that is pure envy. And it's not pompous for you to admit that this person is envious of me. Admit it, sit with it, it's uncomfortable. You know. So there are lots of things that we can do. You know, first things first, we must think about behavioral change, you know. And behavioral change also comes with a lot of women being like the doctor here, you know, stating clearly that this is who I am and this is me. And the more we have so many of these people, the more society would just be forced to actually sit with it and actually change. And just as I sit on that point, I also want to point out that in EPI, we've had female presidents of the SUG, you know, but I think there was something that we had in Jos, but there was something that had happened in the political landscape of northern Nigeria, I think, that has shifted from the whole idea of, you know, struggle to now the idea of opulence. So if you're able to, and that's why in AB we don't have SUG anymore, we have the SLC, and the SLC, the school gives you a car, and you know, so if you're able to follow the process, now if when you get to leadership position, we will take care of you, that kind. So there's a political change, and I think that's in relation to also how we see gender, you know, being involved in, and it's something that we must get back to the drawing table to do. But secondly, about what we can do to ensure that we have more women in politics, we must put money in the hands of women. This thing that we're saying is not cheap. I think back to when I was contesting for my state union when I was in ABU, and we had no money at all. And my friend Nazifa Aliyu, big shout out to you, her father just sent her pocket money, and the guy that was doing my poster was there. And that was how Nazifa transferred all of her money.
Really?
Yeah, to the man. And we had no idea what we were going to eat for the rest of the month because my own money had finished. But I mean, I won the election, so I think that was. But yeah, so it's, I mean, imagine even at that level how expensive it is. So imagine right now, and statistically, poverty is feminine. So we must change that, just so that women are able to find themselves in that place.
Yeah.
And we must also change the way that we raise girls. The reason why men would get up and they would fight is because they don't sit with people's opinions for so long. We raise girls to internalize people's opinions about themselves as fact. And it's not a fact, If someone says something, it's not a fact, it's just that person's opinion. So we should raise girls to say, oh, I'm glad you see it that way, but I don't see it that way. Girls should stop to internalize shame. Girls should stop sitting down with shame. And it's a cultural shift that, women, and I'm glad I start to see that happen.
Yeah.
I'm glad I see mothers push back against words that are told to their little girls. I'm glad to see even fathers say, no, you can't say that to my daughter's hearing. So we must do all that. A call to action. I think we should just all sit back and tell ourselves the truth, and decide to do better. Each of us, there's just something that deep down that you're supposed to do better on. Do it. Don't wait for anyone to prompt you. Don't wait for anyone to applaud you. Do it. Whatever way.
Thank you, Dr. Aziza.
To generally speak, a lot have been said, and I totally agree with what people all shared before. And then one thing that I want to say is that we are so used to leadership being some aggressive, outspoken. You understand what I'm trying to say? And sometimes it does not necessarily appeal to a woman, majority of a female characteristics. And that's one of the reasons we're talking about what's the advantage of women, especially in governance. Our first approach is not to attack, unlike what most people, before a woman can come out and scream, she has been frustrated.
Yeah.
So the method non-combatant, alternative, compromise are some of the characteristics that what women bring that is relevant to leadership, especially if you want to get things done.
Yeah.
So a lot of time we think, especially in our own ecosystem, like you say, because it's a struggle, the option is to fight. I was told that the person that invented side mirror in a car was a woman. And I believe even AC in cars, yes. Because the initial just to get from here to there, but the convenience was not adopted to that purpose. So generally, I think in our ecosystem, when we are talking about leadership, we should also shed light on other qualities of leadership. You should be able to talk when you need to talk and defend when you need to defend. But it's not necessary that you have to be someone that is here and there, which is something that maybe we might see in the male counterpart. So leadership too can be feminine, right? So you can have men too that are reserved, and then when it's time, they do what they need to do. So I think that in terms of supporting women, she has said something that is very fantastic. Ability. I don't want to talk about only money. Ability to mobilize resources is very important, and we will not lie that 70 to 80% of income for women in our ecosystem come from their male community, whether male friends, whether father, brother, or husband. And what that does is that they are not in control of that money. Politics, leadership is about money. When I ran for the parliament, I spent nothing less than 10 million naira. I'm not running. Yes, I am not. Yes, I am not running for local government too, and I'm not running for House of Rep. I traveled 22 states to speak with 3 representatives per state. Even to travel alone, I couldn't travel alone as a woman, right? I had to travel with somebody. I spent 10 million, and this was in 2021, 2022. And who gave me this money? My uncle gave me this money. And then I spoke to 1 or 2 of my other mentors. So let's not dispute the fact that money, even if we bring down the number of the tickets, the cost of the tickets, because young people also would complain about these issues and rest, you still need to. So women in politics, I think part of the mentorship capacity building is how to mobilize resources. And women will know how to do that, right? But we need to know that, okay, this is how it is done in the political space. So that is how you can move ahead. And then when we should give opportunities. There's a nursery or incubation period. Do you understand me? And young women must know how to do apprenticeship. Carry somebody's bag, yo. Carry you. That is how it starts for our male counterpart. You see them, they're following one honorable up and down. Is they're learning on the go. So you will know how the honorable was or the person was able to appease people that were shouting and screaming. You knew how to avoid this. You would have seen those experiences. So I mean, for call to action, I think my colleague at Arsenal said something that, look, we need to tell ourselves the truth. There are some Nigeria as a whole, we've been asking for some affirmation action. We've been asking for political party actively ensuring that what the women wing is effective. We've been calling for that equitable representation in the national working committees and the rest. We've asked for some of these things, and I think that community, especially our he for she as well, needs to also intensify the efforts to ensure that what women have this opportunity. And it doesn't remove the fact that some people would mess up, right? When someone tell me that a certain somebody messed up, I say, I can list for every female that messed up, there are 10, 15, 20 men that did exactly the same thing. So this idea that women are all angel might not necessarily be the angle that we'll be pushing anymore. But that we are individuals, and we bring a perspective that is necessary for a diverse community. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much. Wow. It's been an amazing conversation, and I think we see why this first episode is hot.
Bringing this was amazing and so insightful. I was just relaxing and taking it in.
And you want to enjoy
maybe I will go in and reconsider your fire that you appoint her.
Yeah, the way she runs, she will know because she likes to sustain that behind the scenes. So don't worry. I think we can build the bridges here. And this brings us to the end of this episode. Oh my God. Remember, this is the Women's Month, and we're talking about accelerated action. So please, in the comment section, tell us one way you would support a woman in your life today, this month, and for the rest of the year. And I'll leave it over to my co-host to tell you what we need you to do.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, watch, share. Also follow us on all social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, or X. And we're going to give shout out to our crew members. Shout out to DJ Drexx, our sound producer. Shout out to Fredcoker, our cinematographer. Shout out to Ayomide, our co-host. And also Andres Sewese, our co-host. Shout out to our amazing director, Hamilton Odemenam. And also shout out to Ifeanyi. He's also our cinematographer.
Yes. Thank you. It's been an amazing conversation. I know, we always end with a cheers. When you're on, you're amplified.